Welcome to this episode of One Mountain, Many Paths with Dr. Marc Gafni. Today's topic is shame and how to overcome shame, because you, I, and every other human on planet Earth have made mistakes in our past. Whether it was years ago, months ago, or days ago, we all have taken actions that we wish we could go back to and fix and change and re-author. But up until now, there has been no clear process on how to do that. That is what you are going to learn today with Dr. Marc Gafni. He's going to be teaching about Teshuvah, which is how the universe is actually structurally built in a way so that we don't need to stay broken. You're going to learn how to deal with shame and become a better person because of it. You're also going to learn what science is starting to reveal about our ability to actually go back and influence the past. And we're also going to be talking about the reason why we keep making the same mistakes and how to evolve and start making new mistakes in a better direction. All of that is coming to you in today's episode of One Mountain, Many Paths with Dr. Marc Gafni. Enjoy.
Okay, here we go. So the theme we've been talking about, which I'm going to add a major piece to right now, the theme we've been talking about is Teshuvah, T-E-S-H-U-V-A-H. And Teshuvah means, in the esoteric lineage of the Wisdom of Solomon, and in multiple other lineages, it means, it's mistranslated, as we've pointed out already many times, as penitence or repentance, which is contaminated or tainted by a Latin sense of the notion of original sin, right? A fundamentally fallen human being that is broken, that is always lost in sin and needs to repent, and lost in a kind of pre-modern version of sin, and is always repenting and is always self-flagellating, right? Is always penitent. That's not what Teshuvah means. Teshuvah means in the esoteric lineage the following. Teshuvah means the capacity to move underneath time and to return to a prior time and to literally re-author what happened in the prior time. Meaning Teshuvah is literally an ontological time machine. Ontologically, not mythopoetically, for real. For realsies, there's an actual structure in cosmos itself, which is an ontological time machine. Right? Does that make sense? Okay, so there's an ontological time machine. Ontology means for realsies, which allows me to go back. Now, why is that necessary? Why do we need that? We need that because without that, we are shattered. We are psychologically shattered. We can't make love. We can't be in love. We can't raise children well. We can't access joy. And on top of all that, we create a pervasive despair, which is the seeding, the ground for the meta-crisis. Why? Because every single person makes mistakes, and every single person makes legitimate mistakes. And by the way, I keep doing this with my hand because I lifted too much weight. So I had too much going up on the weight. So I slightly sprained my hand. So as I'm moving my hand, I'm feeling that. So apologies. Okay. So because I make mistakes, because I mess up, right? Because I can get lost in shadow, because I can act out, right? And again, that's true for every human being. There's no human being who doesn't crash. There's no human being who's only the pristine hallelujah of wondrous beauty, right? Every human being has a pristine hallelujah of wondrous beauty and depth and joy, and every human being is in some fundamentally sense stunning. And every human being also has part of them that acts out, part of them that messes up. Now, that doesn't mean it's okay. That doesn't mean, oh, I just do that. No. It means, wow, I've got to challenge that. I've got to challenge that. I've got to transform, right? And I want to be making new mistakes. Do you ever get that sentence? Most people keep making the same mistake again and again. Only a tzaddik, right, an enlightened one, and we all have to enter into some form of enlightenment. what we've called the democratization of enlightenment. Only an enlightened one makes new mistakes. We have to make new mistakes. To transform means I keep making higher and higher level mistakes, but I resolve the first level and now I make a new level of mistake. But I don't keep doing the same thing. But it takes a while, right? We make mistakes, and sometimes they're serious, and sometimes they hurt people, and sometimes we cause despair, and sometimes we cause loneliness, and sometimes we cause hurt and insult, in a very deep and profound way, either by the way we show up or by not showing up. And when we realize that happened, and it happened yesterday and the day before and last week and a year ago, and it happened, when I was 17 or 18, right? Like, wow, right? How do I go back? What do I do about that? And if I actually realize, and if I actually look at that action, I look at that mistake, and I look at that pathology, and I look at that fuck up, and I look at that collapse, and I look at it clearly, and I see what I did, and I see the impact of it, I'm devastated. And of course, one option is remove the devastation by saying I never had free will. It's a very, very bad move. I think the move is not true for 1,000 reasons. 1,000 people with me think the move is not true, but there are people like my colleague Sam Harris who tries to sell that move, right? And it's not his sale. He's actually an agent for a particular, as Daniel Dennett pointed out, for a particular strain of thinkers, deep within the academy, right? And within older religions. And of course, right, that same idea, let me see if I can find it for you. Kind of the real person who kind of really went to sell that idea is Robert Sapolsky in his book, Life Without Free Will. He's expressing kind of in a kind of, formal way that idea. That idea is wrong. It's not true. It's simply not true. We do have free will. And we have free will, and we'll spend a few sessions on free will. It's extremely important. I've thought about it a lot. And I think that the opinion of the overwhelming majority of the most subtle and speculative minds in the world that we have free will is correct, but you don't need to think about it that much. There's actually a much more direct way to access the knowing that we have free will. We know we have free will because if you and I are in a conversation and we don't experience that the other has some dimension of freedom when we're talking, if I don't experience that the other, me and David are talking, right? We're going to sit and we're going to chat, right? I'm talking to Haley, we're going to sit and chat, right? I'm talking to Jacqueline, we're going to sit and chat. If Jacqueline thinks that I'm reading a text, I'm not really talking to her, but I'm actually reading prompts in a text. I'm just pretending to talk to her. She's a little revolted, a little disgusted, and she steps out of the conversation. And as we have a direct, as Habermas points out, right, the great German philosopher who just passed away a few weeks ago, as Habermas correctly points out, we have a direct experience of a dimension of freedom in our communication. And actually all of our communication, all is premised on that axiom, on that direct experience of free will. Meaning none of life would make sense without that. And in that sense, it's not common sense in the sense of a leap. It's a common sense sacred axiom of reality in the sense that nothing in life makes sense without it. You simply can't live life without it. So that's a direct, what we call in CosmoErotic Humanism, in the new story of value, that's a direct anthro-ontological experience of freedom that we have direct access to all the time. Now that doesn't mean that everything's free. Actually, lots and lots of things determine our action. But after all those things that determine our action are accounted for, there's a dimension of freedom beyond that. That's what we call free will. So if we're free, if there's a dimension of freedom, and we cause hurt and we cause pain, so then we're shamed. And if we're not pathological, we're in some sense shamed. So if I deny the fact that I cause pain, well, then I'm living in denial. I'm not a person you can have a conversation with. I'm not aware of my own self. I'm not aware of my impact, and I'll continue in my denial to cause pain, and I become dangerous, right? And I become not someone you can actually be intimate with because I'm unaware of my own nature. So I both become dangerous and I become someone you can't be intimate with if I deny the pain that I've caused, right? Or I medicate, or it hurts so much I medicate it, in which case I'm also numbed and dulled, and I become a person that's hard to be intimate with and a person who can't act from their own deepest Eros, right? 2. Or 3, I project that violation that I did on someone else. I know there's a violation. I can't own it myself. So I project it on someone else, which creates polarization between me and them, which creates further conflict, further non-intimacy, further, ultimately, violence, further hatred, further othering, which is the source of all the isms that have created most of the world's, right, horrific violence and pain, right? Like, wow, right? So I actually need to do what? Stay close to me. I need to be able to look carefully, you with me, everybody? And actually engage in this, face everything, avoid nothing, this knowing, no, I really did this. I really did this. I really caused this pain. But then when I do that, what happens? You ready? I'm lost in shame. I'm drenched in shame. When I actually look at it, when I look at myself, I'm actually drenched in shame. Why am I drenched in shame? Because what did I do? So what should I do? I should go fix it, right? I should go heal it. I should go transform it, right? Well, no, I can't. It happened yesterday. It's over. Does everyone get it? It's so profound. Not guilt. Forget about guilt. Shame. I don't want to make the shame, stay with us. I don't want to make the shame-guilt distinction now, but guilt in a word, guilt is an experience of having made a mistake that I can correct, right? Shame means I'm broken. It can't be fixed, right? And because it happened yesterday, I can't fix it. Does that make sense? Right, so guilt is a juridic term, right? Or it's okay to feel guilty and then fix it, right? But shame is not a juridic term. Shame is the experience that I'm broken and I can't be fixed. Shame is the experience that I'm missing a part and you can't order it at the factory because the factory stopped making that part. The factory discontinued that part, right? I'm discontinued, right? I can't be fixed. I didn't make a mistake. I am a mistake, right? Right? I didn't break some vessels. I am broken in a fundamental way. Does everyone get that? That's shame. So if I'm drenched in shame, shame itself is the root of all evil. Shame is the root of all evil. If I'm drenched in shame, if I can't go backwards and fix it and heal it and transform it, and now I recognize it, I'm not denying it, I'm not medicating it, right? I'm not projecting it, right? I'm staying intimate with the truth of myself and the truth of the moment and the truth of the we space between us. Does that make sense? So now I'm drenched in shame. But shame itself, this experience that I'm broken, is the root of all evil. Right? Shame is the root of all evil. Shame is, right, the second I'm shamed, I'm devastated. I feel I lose my ability to dance. Guilty feet have got no rhythm. Okay, that was really poorly sung. But you know the song? Who knows the song? Guilty feet have got no rhythm. I can't dance, right? But it should be shamed feet have got no rhythm, right? Shamed feet. Thank you, George, right? Shamed feet have got no rhythm. But shamed feet have got no rhythm, meaning I lose the cadence. I become decadent, decadence. I can't dance. I can't dance. I lose my joy. I can't act in the world. I can't create a better world. I can't create the new paintings. I can't create the new Eros. I can't actually, I'm stuck and lost in myself. I'm lost in that interior castle of despair and shame. And then I become non-intimate with myself and non-intimate with my beloveds and non-intimate with reality. And then in some sense I resign and I give up on myself because I'm broken and I can't be fixed. And once I give up on myself, then I begin to act in that way, which causes evil on an exponentially larger level. Sauron got destroyed by shame. That's why it became Sauron. Right? And we become not just personally shamed, we become a planet drenched in shame. Okay? The response, the solution, but the solution's not technical. It's not 4 steps too. No, it's a structural understanding of the nature of reality and the nature of time itself. And this understanding tells me that there are 2 vectors of time. There's one vector of time, which is a line. It's not just a thin line. It's not just what Henry Bergson called, right, a spatialized line of points. Right? Points are in space, so a spatialized line is kind of a line in time. It's not just a temporal line, right? A thin temporal line. It's what I call a thick line. It's a plot line. There's a plot line. But not only is there a plot line in which a point on yesterday's line can't be returned to because that's the nature of a line. There's a second dimension in time. There's a second vector in time. And we know that there's a second vector in time for many reasons, but one of them is, we know it through retrocausation in physics, we know it in a whole bunch of new ways in science today, but first we know it because it's a moral necessity of cosmos. It's a fundamental need of cosmos. There is a need in cosmos, there's a fundamental ontological need in cosmos to be able to go back in time. Does that make sense? And remember, how do we know things about reality? Let's go back from where we began. We know things because science works because it's a human cosmos, right? And so the human being accesses in their interior the mathematical laws of cosmos. So not only does exterior science work because it's a human cosmos, but interior science works because it's a human cosmos. Does everyone get that?
We just opened an online school where you can study with Dr. Marc Gafni and a brilliant community of people from all around the globe. In this school, there is one goal: to become who you must become. We all can see what's going on a global scale. We can see that at the heart of global culture, we are at war. We are not using our resources well. We are not preparing this planet so that future generations can thrive. Instead, we are degrading the very biosphere of the world. The problem is, most people who are trying to make solutions for what's going on are not actually going to the root. Who we must become is about studying the root cause of existential risk. And the root cause is what we think a human is. We need a new story of what it means to be human. You, I, and everyone else who's studying with Dr. Marc Gafni can feel that in our bones, that we need an evolution of what it means to be human if we are going to actually respond to global existential risk. This school is where you will study the new story of value, which is solving that exact problem. What is the root cause, and how can you become the person that you were born to be, who's able to respond and help guide humanity into a new way of being? Click the link in the description to get your 14-day free trial and join Who We Must Become, the mystery school for the new humanity. I'll see you in there.
Interior science works because it's a human cosmos. And interior science tells me that I can't live drenched in shame. I have a fundamental need to be able to address shame. How can I address shame? How can I overcome the healing? How can I heal the wounding, the devastation that I intentionally or unintentionally inflicted on the people that I love most yesterday, either by the way I didn't show up or by the way I did show up? I have to be able, are you following? To go back in time and fix it. We all make mistakes, okay? We all make mistakes. I make a mistake. I devastated someone 4 years ago, and there's nothing I can do to fix it. If there's nothing I can do to fix it, I'm drenched in shame. But cosmos, by definition, okay, cosmos by definition doesn't allow for me to be drenched in shame. Because, how do we know that? Because we know, and we've done a lot of work on, that cosmos is a movement towards wholeness. That's the nature of cosmos. Cosmos all the way up and all the way down is a movement towards wholeness, and I would pick up this book, right, which talks about that, right? It's quite important, okay? Or you can also pick up a book called A Return to Eros that engages in that, or Unique Self. But for now, Cosmos, I'd pick that up. But for now, I'll just give it to you in short form, okay? Here's the Eros value equation of cosmos that it works in science all the way up and all the way down, right? Eros is the experience of radical aliveness, desiring ever deeper contact, and ever greater wholeness, which creates in its wake ever more value. That's the Eros equation that we've spoken about for 5 years. That Eros equation applies in the world of matter, the world of chemistry, and then in the world of biochemistry and organic chemistry, in the world of genetics, and then as it leaps to kind of metabolic life, right? What's called sentience, right? That, and then it leaps from sentience to organismic, higher forms of organismic life, and then to a neural cord and a neural net. And then we move to the depth of human self-reflection, all the way from matter to life to mind. That same definition of Eros value, this drive towards wholeness, applies all through cosmos. That's clear. So this movement through what's called deep time. But again, even deep time, we think, oh, why was there all those billions of years of empty time? There wasn't empty time. That's a mistake. There was not empty time, okay? Right? There was not empty time. Deep time is not billions of years of empty time. Actually, the suggestion that sentience only begins at the world of life, which we might call the second Big Bang, right? When we go from matter to life, is actually not correct. The world of matter is filled with sentience. There's a metabolic sentience that begins right when the biosphere emerges. Okay, you got it? But actually, there's not billions of years of emptiness. There's billions of years of a self-actualizing cosmos, which cosmos has an interior aliveness, as Richard Feynman points out correctly, or more accurately, Freeman Dyson points out correctly. There's an interiority. It's Alfred North Whitehead, the mathematician who writes Principia Mathematica. With Russell, there's an interior aliveness all the way up and all the way down. The universe feels, right? Whitehead calls it a prehension. The interior sciences call it chukah. The universe feels, and the universe feels Eros value. There's value all the way down in cosmos. Right? Value means something. Okay, value means something, and I'm not going to go down that road. But just for now, value is a quality of rightness in cosmos, right, which allures, it's an interior allurement towards ever more value and ever more wholeness. That is the movement of cosmos. So when that movement, which is teshuvah, it is the return towards wholeness. So you've got this infinite reality. Infinite reality involutes, right? It contracts to a point, to a singularity. It explodes in a singularity. It evolves. Then it's evolving towards greater wholeness. That's the movement of reality. That's what Plotinus is describing. That's what Kashmir Shaivism is describing. That's what Abhinavagupta, articulating Kashmir Shaivism, is describing. So there's this movement towards wholeness. So atoms move towards wholeness. Macromolecules move towards wholeness. Autocatalytic macromolecule cycles intensify their intimacy, and Stuart Kaufman's beautiful description then actually explode to the next level of intimacy and wholeness, which we call, right, cellular life, protocellular life, and then cellular life. It's all a movement towards wholeness. Now, at the human level, right, let's everyone come back. It's beautiful. At the human level, when we hit the human level, then the movement to wholeness that is inherent in the very structure of cosmos. Does everyone get this? Then the movement to wholeness that's inherent in the very structure of cosmos, that movement to wholeness that's inherent in the very structure of cosmos, at the human level, demands the ability that the human being, right, who is the expression of all of cosmos, right, all of cosmos, all of prior cosmos lives in the human being, from muons all the way up. And so now the human being, right, who is an expression of the entire movement of cosmos, is now needs to move towards wholeness. Right? The human being wants to move towards wholeness, but you can't move towards wholeness because you fucked up 3 years ago, right? A decade ago, 2 decades ago, right? What do you do with the past? Do you get that? What do you do with the past? So stay close. Stay close. So you have to be able to return to a second innocence. Not because a mythological God in the sky waved a wand and said the sin is removed. No, that's not a movement towards wholeness. Actually what evolution tells me is that the movement to wholeness, this is the sensibility of evolution. Stay close, everybody. The sensibility of evolution, not just the fact, but the sensibility of evolution. And often religious texts, they try and work out the facts of evolution, but they miss the sensibility of evolution. The sensibility of evolution is that reality is inherently moving towards wholeness. Does everyone get that? Reality is inherently moving towards wholeness. So there's got to be a movement towards wholeness within the human being that can reach towards and make whole that which is broken. Right? And as I can only hold the holy and broken, hallelujah, if I realize that there's a blaze of light in every word, it doesn't matter which I heard. It's a holy and broken hallelujah means I can move back towards the wholeness. How do I move back towards the wholeness? Because I have to have the capacity to access a second vector in time. There's a linear movement in time, but there's also a circular movement in time. But it's not a thin circle. It's not just circle, circle, circle. The wheels of the bus go round and round. It's a circle that, stay close to me, that circles back to gather in a missing or split off piece, like, for example, a place, a dynamic where the script of desire that I was living in caused harm and caused devastation. I have the capacity to get on what we've called in the last several months the memory-go-round, because memory is not just a trace in the brain. Memory is a living resonance, right, of the field of desire, so I can actually access the memory. I can, as it were, enter the eternal now. I enter the eternal now. The eternal now, with Wittgenstein, the great logical positivist, said, right, lives beneath and beyond time. Eternity is not everlasting time. Eternity is beneath and beyond time. I enter the eternal now. I go beneath beyond time. I get on the merry-go-round. I enter the memory of that past action. I go back to that past action, and I have the capacity to re-script, to re-author my script of desire, and to reenact that action in my mind. Now, stay close, stay close. That doesn't mean I don't owe restitution. It doesn't mean I don't need to make amends. But it means in terms of the fundamental metaphysical stain, the shame, I can actually make that whole. I have the capacity to make that whole. Now, stay close, stay close. What's the name of that article? Let me just look it up for a second. What was that article? It's a very controversial article, but I think he answered. It's not just one. There's about 10 major tracks. But one article is Daryl Bem in 2011 wrote something called Feeling the Future, Experimental Evidence for Anomalous Retroactive Influences on Cognition and Affect. Daryl Bem, 2011. If you look up online, it'll tell you how it's been attacked. But Bem actually defended it well, and there's about 7 other vectors of research that parallel Bem, which is about experimental evidence for anomalous retroactive influences on cognition and affect. And what that means is, there's something called retroactive causation that science has been looking at for the last X amount of years, which is actually being more and more carefully documented. And retroactive causation, right, is a set of experiments that show that actually the linear dimension of time is actually bisected by another dimension of time, that allows you to actually go back and, through your action in the present, affect the past in some real way. Right? And generally, those affects, that ability is connected to intense emotional valence, right? To love Eros, to intense emotional valence, the desire to fix intense emotional valence. Now, I'm not going to, we're writing a chapter, we're writing a book now on time and eternity, and there's 7 or 8 documented forms of retrocausation, right, that exist now in the science, but those are pointing to something deep in the interior sciences, which is at the core of the Solomon lineage, right, which was at the core of the Solomon lineage of the mystery schools that formed the Renaissance. These are the mystery schools that we talked about in the very beginning in our introduction, right, which were formed by, in many ways, the mystery schools of the Renaissance, via Pico della Mirandola's teachers, via Ficino's teachers, via some of Da Vinci's friends and teachers. That's a different conversation, right? But just to understand very deeply, this is an anthro-ontological necessity, meaning because the universe is moving towards wholeness, at the level of matter, at the level of life, and at the level of the depth of the self-reflective human mind. You with me, everybody? Since that's the nature of reality, that's A, stay close, stay close, stay close, A, B, everyone ready for B? B, since all human beings fall away from wholeness. Does that make sense, that sentence, everybody? That's B. Everyone get that sentence? All human beings fall away from wholeness. That's B. C, when we fall away from wholeness, that falling away, that broken hallelujah, if you will, takes place in the past. C. D, you with me, everybody? D, and if I don't deny it or medicate it or ignore it or project it, and I face it directly, I'm profoundly shamed. D, E, to live in shame personally and collectively is devastating. E. F, some religions said, so therefore, since you can't live in shame, you have a magical God who taps you with a wand and now you're forgiven. But that actually violates the evolutionary sensibility. Because what's the evolutionary sensibility, right? F, are we up to F or G? I don't know, let's call it 7. 7, I'll switch to number 7. 7, the evolutionary sensibility is such that there's an internal movement within myself towards wholeness. I need to be able to engage in reholification from within myself. And then 8, so that means that there's an actual moral necessity in cosmos that I have direct access to enterontologically to be able to go back and to heal the trauma. And if I can't heal the trauma of my own affect, my own effect, and the affect that I've affected, the own pain that I've inflicted, either personally, or we can't heal the collective trauma of the pains of the past. If we can't heal that, meaning we can't actually engage in teshuvah. We can't go back and reenact. That doesn't mean we don't need restitution. That doesn't mean that justice falls out the window. Not at all. But it means that we can actually go back and reenact that. We can actually get on the merry-go-round that we enter through the eternal now and access the living valence of the memory and re-author in some real sense the past in a real way, in a way that we actually reconfigure our will. And by reconfiguring our will, which is the field of desire that's actually alive in the action in the present. And we spent on about 6 weeks ago, right? Anyone who's new, 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, we talked about this in great depth for many hours. I'm just referencing that now. Right, so I go back and I rewrite the story. I can actually transform the shame because I actually have the capacity to heal, to evolve, right, to transform, to transfigure the past. So wow. So that capacity is missing in culture today. Does everyone get that? That's where I wanted to get. That capacity today is missing in culture. Do you get that? We do not have the capacity for teshuvah. We've lost access to teshuvah. It's become, teshuvah has been mistranslated, right? Does everyone get that? It's been mistranslated. It's like huge. It's been mistranslated, right? It's been mistranslated as penitence or repentance, right? We view time as an irreversible line. We view it as a thin line. We view time as being chronometric, chronos, right? We view time as being utterly uniform, day after day after day after day after day. That's what Shakespeare meant when he said that it's a tale told by an idiot, a story told by an idiot full of sounds and furies signifying nothing. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps day after day until the last syllable of recorded time. That creeping to the last syllable of recorded time. That is exactly what is the result of a world without teshuvah, right? And this tale told by an idiot, full of sounds and fury signifying nothing. I've shared with you all before. Down in the South, one of the early existentialists in the 20th century in the United States calls his book "The Sound and the Fury," right? Faulkner, and the key figure in Faulkner's book, "The Sound and the Fury," is Quentin Compson, and Quentin Compson commits suicide in the book because he can't go backwards. So he commits suicide in the book, and the image, right, in Faulkner's book is as Quentin Compson, this young Harvard boy, commits suicide, there's a broken clock that goes tick, tock, but it's a meaningless broken clock because time is broken, right? That's what George Orwell meant when he describes totalitarianism as the clock strikes 13, right? We're lost in time. We kill time, and time destroys us. We actually need to be able to re-access the qualitative field of time. The time's not just quantitative. Time is a qualitative essence. But it's not just a qualitative essence. It's actually a covenantal essence. It's actually a normative essence. Time is a quality. Time is alive. It's living. And there is an irreversible flow of time moving forward, past, present, and future. But there's a cross current, a moral cross-current in time, which is the movement of teshuvah, the movement of reality moving towards wholeness, and that's what heals shame. And because reality moves towards wholeness, reality opens up a cross current in time in which I can circle back, I can return to a past moment, I can reauthor that moment through shifting and rewriting my script of desire and reorienting my intention. And then I don't stay back in that circle. Then the line plus the circle equal a spiral, and then the plot line spirals forward. The line plus the circle become a spiral, and the evolutionary spiral continues forward. That's the evolutionary sensibility of time. Wow, it's so deep. It's so deep, right? It's so deep, right? It's so deep. It's so deep, right? And I tried to in the shortest time possible to give you a sense of it, And this is I still didn't get to read the actual piece, the actual text, because I wanted just to kind of give everyone the best sense I could of this sense. Right, this fundamental and kind of primary sense, right, of this movement within cosmos. Now let's just understand, okay, and here's the last point. Right, when Plotinus, there is a great field of interior sciences, East and West, right? And all of them have a sense of what I would call a prior wholeness. Whether you're reading Abhinavagupta, who's talking about the tattvas, or you're reading Plotinus, who's talking about the emanations, or you're reading the Solomon lineage Kabbalists, or you're reading the Aboriginal traditions, or you're reading whatever tradition you're reading, Taoism, right? The Tao that's beneath the 10,000 things. There's a fundamental interior science realization, which I can't cover that in a minute, but there's a fundamental, the most subtle and speculative mind-heart bodies across space and time have come to not a dogma, but a fundamental interior science realization of a prior wholeness that we're reaching for. It's why we have an inconsolable longing that can't be healed by anything else. We have a longing to return to a wholeness that lives in us that we feel is lost. That's our anthro-ontological access to that broader interior science realization. Now, that is described in many ways, but one of the ways it's described is as an involution, that all of infinity involutes, right? And then there's a discretion of infinity in a point, which is the singularity of the Big Bang, and then that evolves, which is why in the first nanosecond, of the flaring forth of the Big Bang, you have all the laws of mathematics, all the laws of physics are already in place. You have a cosmos of unbearable and dazzling precision and communion and intimacy and structure, right? That's in place in the first millisecond of unimaginable complexity. Just look at a chlorophyll molecule. Step out of philosophy into molecular chemistry and organic chemistry. Just look at a chlorophyll molecule. Study a chlorophyll molecule for a week and come back to me and tell me there's not a prior wholeness in the cosmos before human beings. Study mitosis, study meiosis, right? Look carefully at the structure of neurons within the human body and how they function, right? But all of reality, there's a prior wholeness, A. There's a desire to return to that prior wholeness, B, but here's the addition. This is the big addition, okay? This is the big addition. The big addition, the big realization, which I've spoken about before many times, I'll just put it on the table now so we have it, is we don't just return to the prior wholeness. It's not even just, I've said it a few times because I've reread, it's on my desk here someplace, I can't find it, but I've reread quite a few times in the last, here it is, someplace. In the last couple of weeks, I've reread many times T.S. Eliot's Four Quartets, right? And he says at the end of the last quartet, he writes very beautifully, he says, "We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time." It's more than T.S. Eliot. It's more than T.S. Eliot. It's not just that I return and know the place for the first time. It's that in that journey in deep time witness that you were witness to, 25 minutes ago, something's happening. And there's mystery. And anyone who tells you there's no mystery, get out. Right? Meaning don't listen to them. Of course there's mystery. Cosmos is mystery and gnosis. And anyone who's got it all worked out, don't talk to. Because there's mystery. There's always mystery. But we have a sense, right? A sensibility, and we have an enormous amount of empirical right, realization, right, that actually it's not just that we return to a prior wholeness, but actually wholeness somehow becomes more whole. Right? If you will, there's more God to come. Right? There's more wholeness to come. And you, my friend, you are the more wholeness to come. That is the realization of the interior sciences. That's the realization you actually have a direct access to in your own body, heart, mind, which is why you're so obsessed, appropriately so, but it shouldn't be exclusively so, with your own development, with your own story. Because you actually understand that if you get your story right, if you actually become more whole, actually something unimaginably important happens that matters unimaginably. And that's not just your narcissism. And not just that you're obsessed with yourself because you haven't stepped out of the separate self. As the meditation teachers try and persuade us, that's not true. Right? The reason you're obsessed with yourself is because you're listening in on a divine vector of conversation and you hear the infinite divine, the infinite intimate thinking about you and feeling you all the time. There's more God to come, and that more God to come is you, and that more God to come is me, and that more God to come is the intimate communion of we. Okay, Krista.
Thank you, Marc Gafni. That was wild and beautiful. And I want to make sure that we can all find our way inside here, because this was a lot. This was huge and powerful and transforming. But then, like, what are we going to do with it? What is the next step that we can take? So I'm going to show you a couple of steps. So the first is, we mentioned already, this book, Homo Amor Manifesto. This is the core of the core of the core. This explains the core of the mission. This explains the core of CosmoErotic Humanism, this new story of value. So this is the basic book that we all want to be reading. And as we said, in our community, we have a book club right now going through this book together, talking about it and being in conversation and studying this. Okay, so the new story of value book. Then this book is called Wholemates, the future of relationships. So this is all about a new story of relationships. So if that's the topic that you are most alert to, read this book. This one is called Your Unique Self. And this book, as it says, it's about you, your unique self. So it's a new story of identity. And lastly, this one is called A Return to Eros, which is about a new story of Eros, intimacy, desire, pleasure, sexuality. So definitely also read this book. Those are the 4 books that I would recommend starting with one of those. And then I want to show everyone the new website called Who We Must Become. Easy to remember, whowemustbecome.com. Whenever you are lost, go to that website and you can find your way to all the different pieces. So I will share with you what that looks like. You should be able to see it now. So this is the homepage. There's a beautiful video there and you can find your way here. But I first want to show you the newsletter. If you sign up here, most of you are probably already signed up, but please do that, because that way you receive every week a summary of the teachings, the essays, the articles, the books that are published. So you get it in your inbox once a week. Then if you click on the menu here on free content, here you can find all the free content. So the YouTube channel. So every episode we publish, of course, every week on YouTube, but also a lot more clips get posted there every week. So watching the replays, you go there. There's a beautiful list of amazing podcasts that Marc did together with Aubrey Marcus, with Andre Ducombe, many beautiful partners, Ian McGilchrist. Here's a small selection of it. You can find those on our YouTube channel as well. Then here you can find essays, and this is the one, Love or Die, that we mention here every week, and that is a beautiful entrance point to get into this new story of value and understand the core principles of what we are talking about here every week. So Love or Die, and if you click on that, you go to our Substack channel, where we post every week a transcript of the teaching, beautifully edited, beautifully laid out, so you can study every week. Here, if you go to teachings here, you can see all the episodes, 501, 502, so you can read them all here. And again, the entrance point is whowemustbecome.com, and there you can find the link to the Substack. Then, of course, we have social media, YouTube, Substack, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok. Here you can find your way to all of that. I really recommend following Marc on Instagram, because we post there 1-minute clips from these teachings, and it's a beautiful way when you're scrolling to get back into it and to resonate with it all over again. So make sure that you follow him here. Then we have the school. We spoke about it's already an amazing, amazing journey, actually stepping on the path of becoming Homo Amor, the new human and the new humanity, studying together in community, practicing together twice a week evolutionary prayer, once a week whole body gospel with Dr. Christina Kincaid, Marc's partner in life and work, and actually they co-authored this book, A Return to Eros, together. So that's happening every Monday. A lot is going on in this community. We start actually in July, the 5th of July, we start again with a 3-week deep dive live course together with Parallax, with Andrew Sweeney, diving deeper into unique self and sharing evolutionary teachings that haven't been shared anywhere yet. So kind of the evolution of unique self. So those 3-week courses happen every quarter. So all of this is part of your Who We Must Become membership. Then the next on the tab in the menu, if you click that, you go to a new page actually here, but this is our live event. So we have every year we come together at the Mystery School live. Everyone from all over the world comes to Europe. And we have 5 days together. Studying together, of course, with Dr. Marc Gafni, with Dr. Christina Kincaid. Being in this field together for 5 days is amazing and powerful. So that is happening April 19th till April 23rd in 2027. And if you sign up now before the 1st of July, you get a super, 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 super early bird discount. So I definitely recommend doing that. Then the next, here you have the books. This is also the first selection that I just showed you that we spoke about today. First Principles and First Values, Return to Eros, Unique Self, Homemates. There's a lot more. We're going to post all of the books here, of course, but this is your first entry into the great library, into studying the books. Also the One Mountain oral essays. So 500 episodes of One Mountain we have edited, beautifully laid out on the page and published into books. So those are about 40 volumes of One Mountain, Many Paths oral essays. So these weekly teachings are all published in these beautiful books on Barbie, on the crossing. Finally, one tab about the think tank, because Who We Must Become is, of course, part of the think tank, the Center for World Philosophy and Religion. So here you can read more about that. And once you are signed up for the community, Who We Must Become, you can click here on login. So whenever you are lost and you can't find the community, just go to whowemustbecome.com and then click on login. And then here you go straight to the student platform. Here you get a little taste of it, but I'm going to close here. Maybe next time we'll dive deeper into what you can find on this platform. But for now, I think that was a lot of information. Like I said, you can find everything on whowemustbecome.com. So that's the doorway to all these different pieces. And I can't wait to see each other on the inside, to practice together, to study together. If you have any questions, you're welcome to connect and just take your first step deeper in this beautiful revolution.